Imagine two friends walking out of college graduation together. Same degree, same company, same starting salary of $75,000. They even moved to the same city with identical living costs. Fast forward 20 years, and one is relaxing on a beach somewhere, financially free, while the other is still trapped in the office grind, wondering where all their money disappeared. How does this happen? How do two people with absolutely identical starting points end up in completely different financial realities? The answer will probably shock you, and it goes much deeper than luck or some secret investment formula that only wealthy people know about. What separates these two outcomes isn't intelligence, connections, or even getting lucky with a hot stock pick. It's three simple psychological patterns that determine whether you build wealth or stay broke, regardless of how much you earn. Before we dive in, quick note, if you're new here, I'm Tim, and on this channel, Tim Invests. I help you actually understand money so you can make smarter decisions with every dollar. If you want your income to finally start working for you, hit subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next breakdown. Here's something that might blow your mind. Recent research shows that a huge chunk of people earning over $200,000 annually report living paycheck to paycheck. Think about that for a moment. People bringing in around $16,000 every month are financially stressed, just like someone making minimum wage. If you're earning $50,000 and struggling, you might think these high earners are just terrible with money. You'd be partially correct, but here's the fascinating part. The exact same habits that keep someone broke at $200,000 are the ones keeping someone broke at $50,000. The numbers are just bigger. Money doesn't automatically make you smarter about money. In fact, it often creates a dangerous illusion of security that leads to even worse financial decisions. If you're bad at managing $1,000, you'll probably be bad at managing $10,000. The core issue isn't the amount of money flowing through your life. It's what you do with it while it's there. So what creates this massive difference in outcomes? Why do some people seem to effortlessly accumulate wealth while others can't save anything regardless of their income? The answer lies in understanding three critical mistakes that destroy wealth and three fundamental habits that create it. Let's start with the wealth destroyers, because recognizing these patterns in your own life is the first step toward changing them. The wealth destroyers. The first wealth killer is lifestyle inflation, and it's probably the most insidious trap in personal finance. Here's how it works. You get promoted, and your salary jumps from $50,000 to $60,000. Suddenly, you have an extra $850 per month after taxes. That feels substantial, right? So you upgrade your apartment, lease a better car, start eating at nicer restaurants, maybe add a few new subscriptions to your life. Within a few months, that extra money has completely vanished into your upgraded lifestyle, and you're back to living paycheck to paycheck. Except now you're doing it at a higher income level, which somehow feels even more frustrating. The crazy part is this cycle repeats at every income level. The person making 30,000 dreams about 50,000, convinced that's when all their problems will disappear. The person making 50,000 believes 75,000 is the magic number. The person making 75,000 is certain that once they hit six figures, they'll finally have everything together financially. But what actually happens? Each time their income increases, their spending rises right alongside it. They never actually get ahead because they're constantly upgrading their lifestyle to match their new salary. It's like running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. You're working harder and harder, but you're not actually getting anywhere. I know someone who went from earning $40,000 to $120,000 over 5 years. Sounds like a success story, right? Except they're more stressed about money now than when they were making $40,000. Why? Because instead of maintaining their original lifestyle and banking the difference, they immediately upgraded to living like someone who makes $120,000, new car payment, bigger apartment, expensive gym membership, designer clothing, frequent vacations. Now they're trapped in what I call the golden handcuffs. They can't afford to take risks with their career because they need that high income just to maintain their lifestyle. One missed paycheck and their entire financial house of cards collapses. Compare that to someone who gets the same raises but keeps their lifestyle relatively modest. Maybe they upgrade a few things here and there, but they're intentional about it. They're not trying to look like they make six figures. They're trying to become financially independent. That person is saving $60,000 or $70,000 per year in the difference between their income and expenses. Within a few years, they have enough saved and invested to take real risks, pursue their passions, or even retire early if they choose. The second mistake that keeps people broke is debt. And I'm not just talking about credit cards, although those are definitely a problem. I'm talking about the entire debt lifestyle that so many people fall into without even realizing it. Here's a typical scenario. Someone makes $75,000 per year, which sounds pretty good on paper, but they have a $400 car payment, $200 in minimum credit card payments, a student loan payment, maybe a personal loan from some emergency a few years back. Before they even think about saving or investing, they're sending over $800 per month to various lenders. Now compare that to someone with the exact same income who has zero debt. That debt-free person has an extra $800 every single month to save, invest, or use for opportunities. Over the course of a year, that's almost $10,000 of additional financial flexibility, but it gets worse than just the monthly payments. Debt fundamentally changes how you think about money and opportunity. When you're carrying debt, especially high-interest debt like credit cards, every financial decision becomes about managing that debt rather than building wealth. Let me give you a concrete example. Two people both receive a $5,000 bonus at work. Person A has credit card debt at 20% interest. Person B has no debt. Person A uses the bonus to pay down their credit cards, which is the smart move, but they're essentially getting a guaranteed 20% return just to get back to zero. Person B takes that same $5,000 and invests it in the stock market. Fast forward 10 years. Person A is hopefully debt-free by now, but they have nothing to show for that bonus except the relief of not owing money anymore. Person B's $5,000 investment has potentially grown dramatically, assuming average market returns, same bonus, same income, completely different outcomes based on their starting financial position. This is why debt is so dangerous. It doesn't just cost you money and interest payments, it costs you opportunity. It costs you time. And it costs you the psychological freedom that comes with knowing you don't owe anyone anything. The third mistake is probably the most common, affecting people at every income level. It's the complete lack of financial awareness. Most people have absolutely no idea where their money goes each month. They know how much they earn, they know how much rent costs, but everything else is just a blur of transactions and impulse decisions. I've met people making six figures who couldn't tell you how much they spent on food last month. They have no clue what they're paying for subscriptions, how much they're spending on entertainment, or whether they're actually saving any money at all. In other words, they're flying blind financially, making decisions based on how much money happens to be in their checking account at any given moment. This lack of awareness leads to what I call death by 1,000 cuts. No single purchase seems significant enough to worry about. $5 for coffee, $15 for lunch, $30 for that thing on Amazon, $50 for dinner out. Each transaction feels small and manageable, but they add up to thousands of dollars per month in unconscious spending. Meanwhile, the person who tracks their expenses knows exactly where every dollar goes. They're making conscious decisions about their spending, and they can quickly identify areas where they're wasting money. This awareness alone can free up hundreds or even thousands of dollars per month for saving and investing. The difference between these two approaches might seem subtle, but the psychological impact is enormous. When you're aware of your spending patterns, you start making what I call friction decisions instead of flow decisions. A flow decision is when you just go with whatever feels right in the moment. A friction decision is when you pause and actually think about whether this purchase aligns with your financial goals. Here's where it gets really interesting. These three mistakes I just described aren't really about money at all. They're about psychology. The person who falls into these traps usually has what psychologists call a scarcity mindset. They're constantly worried about missing out, whether that's on experiences, possessions, or social status. This fear of missing out drives them to make emotional spending decisions that feel good in the moment, but destroy their long-term financial prospects. They see money as something that flows through their life rather than something they can accumulate and control. When they get extra money, their first instinct is to spend it before something bad happens or before they talk themselves out of whatever they want to buy. It's like they don't trust themselves to hold on to money, so they get rid of it as quickly as possible. The wealth builders Now let's talk about the habits that actually create wealth, because this is where the real magic happens. The people who build substantial wealth despite average incomes have figured out three fundamental principles that completely change how money works in their lives. The first principle is what I call time leverage. Wealthy people understand that money today is worth dramatically more than money tomorrow, not just because of inflation, but because of compound growth. They're essentially borrowing from their future selves by investing early and consistently. Let me show you how powerful this really is with a story that'll make you want to go back in time and have a serious conversation with your younger self. Meet Sarah and Jessica, both 25 years old, both making $75,000 per year. Sarah decides to invest $3,000 annually for just 10 years, from age 25 to 35. After that, she never invests another penny. Jessica, meanwhile, spends her 20s living it up, traveling, buying designer bags, the whole experience. But at 35, Jessica has an awakening. She realizes she needs to get serious about her future and starts investing $6,000 per year, double what Sarah was putting in. Jessica keeps this up for 30 years straight until she's 65. Here's the plot twist. In many versions of this calculation, depending on the exact returns and timing, Sarah ends up with a similar or even larger balance at retirement than Jessica, despite investing for only 10 years compared to Jessica's 30, and despite investing far less total money. The difference isn't luck, it's time. Sarah gave compound interest an extra decade to work. The person who understands this principle and acts on it in their 20s will build more wealth than someone who waits until their 40s, even if the late starter has a much higher income. But here's what's really fascinating about this. Most people know this information intellectually, but they still don't act on it. Why? Because investing $3,000 when you're 25 feels like a massive sacrifice. You're giving up vacations, nice dinners, clothes, whatever makes you feel good right now. The benefit feels abstract and far away. Meanwhile, starting to invest at 35 feels easier, because you're more established in your career and hopefully more mature about delayed gratification. But by then, you've missed the most valuable years for compound growth. It's like showing up to a party after all the meaningful conversations have already happened. The second wealth-building habit is something I call paying yourself first, and it's probably the most important financial concept you'll ever learn. Most people approach their money backwards. They pay all their bills, buy whatever they want or need, and then save whatever's left over at the end of the month. Spoiler alert, there's usually nothing left over. Wealthy people flip this equation completely. The moment money hits their account, they immediately move a predetermined percentage into savings and investments. They pay their future self before they pay anyone else, including their current self. Only after they've secured their financial future do they figure out how to live on what remains. This might sound like a minor change in approach, but it creates a completely different relationship with money. When you pay yourself first, you're forced to be creative about your spending. You can't just drift through the month buying whatever catches your eye because you've already committed that money to your future. Let's say you make $5,000 per month after taxes. If you pay yourself first, you might immediately transfer $1,000 to investments and savings. Now you have $4,000 to work with for the rest of the month. You'll find ways to make that $4,000 cover everything you need because you have to. Compare that to someone who plans to save whatever's left over. They start the month with $5,000 available for spending. They buy groceries, pay bills, grab lunch with friends, order something online, pay for streaming services, and before they know it, the month is over and they've spent $4,900. They save $100 and feel good about it, not realizing they just chose short-term comfort over long-term financial freedom. The beautiful thing about paying yourself first is that it removes the willpower component from saving. You're not constantly making decisions about whether you can afford to save money this month. The decision is made automatically, and your lifestyle adapts accordingly. The third habit that separates wealthy people from everyone else is their focus on assets versus liabilities. Now, I know this sounds like boring accounting terminology, but stick with me because this concept will change how you think about every purchase for the rest of your life. An asset puts money in your pocket over time. A liability takes money out of your pocket over time. Wealthy people obsess over acquiring assets and minimizing liabilities. Everyone else does the opposite without even realizing it. Here's a perfect example. Two people both decide they need better transportation. Person A buys a brand new car for $40,000 with a loan. They have a monthly payment, insurance costs, maintenance, and the car is losing value every single day. This is a liability disguised as a necessity. Person B buys a reliable used car for $10,000 in cash. But here's the key difference. They take the monthly payment they would have had and invest it instead. Let's say that would have been $600 per month. Over 7 years, instead of making car payments, they're building an investment portfolio. By the time person A has paid off their car loan, they own a 7-year-old vehicle worth maybe $15,000 if they're lucky. Person B owns a 7-year-old vehicle worth maybe $4,000, but they also have a large investment account that's continuing to grow. Same transportation needs, same monthly cash flow, completely different financial outcomes. One person focused on looking successful, the other focused on becoming successful. This mindset shift around assets and liabilities becomes almost addictive once you understand it. Wealthy people start seeing everything through this lens. When they're considering a purchase, they ask themselves, is this going to make me money or cost me money over time? And if it's going to cost them money, they ask, is this cost worth it? Or could I put this money toward something that actually grows my wealth? Let me give you another example that'll probably hit close to home. Two friends both love technology and want to upgrade their home entertainment setup. Friend A drops $3,000 on a massive 75-inch TV with all the latest features. It's gorgeous. Everyone who visits is impressed, and it definitely makes watching Netflix more enjoyable. But 5 years later, that TV is worth maybe a few $100s. Friend B takes the same $3,000 and buys shares in the companies that actually make the TVs, the streaming services, and the content everyone's watching. 5 years later, assuming average market returns, that $3,000 could be worth significantly more. Plus, they've been collecting dividends along the way. Now, I'm not saying you should never buy a TV or that you have to live like a monk to build wealth. The point is that wealthy people are conscious about these decisions. Maybe friend B waits 6 months, finds a great deal on a smaller TV for $800, and invests the remaining $2,200. They still get to enjoy their shows, but they've also made a choice that builds their wealth instead of depleting it. The wealth feedback loop. Here's where it gets really interesting. These habits create what I call a wealth feedback loop. The more assets you accumulate, the more income those assets generate, which gives you more money to buy additional assets. It starts slowly, but it accelerates over time in ways that most people find hard to believe. Think about it this way. If you have $10,000 invested and it grows by 7% annually, you make $700 that year without doing any work. If you have $100,000 invested at the same rate, you make $7,000. If you have $1 million invested, you make $70,000 annually just from your investments. At that point, your money is working harder than most people do at their jobs. This is why starting early is so crucial. Even if you can only invest small amounts, that money has time to grow, and the growth itself starts generating more growth. It's like planting a tree. The earlier you plant it, the more shade you'll enjoy later in life. But here's what really separates the wealthy from the broke, beyond just these mechanical habits. It's their relationship with money itself. Broke people see money as scarce and temporary. They hold on to it loosely because they don't really believe they can keep it anyway. Wealthy people see money as abundant and permanent. They treat it like a tool that can be leveraged to create more opportunities. When a broke person gets extra money, they think, I better spend this before something happens to it or before I change my mind. When a wealthy person gets extra money, they think, how can I use this to generate even more money? It's a completely different mindset that creates completely different outcomes. The broke person is always reacting to their financial situation. They're putting out fires, dealing with emergencies, trying to catch up. The wealthy person is always planning their financial future. They're making decisions today based on where they want to be in 10 or 20 years. Here's something else that might surprise you. Wealthy people aren't necessarily smarter or more disciplined than broke people. They've just developed better systems. They've automated their savings so they don't have to rely on willpower. They've educated themselves about money so they can make informed decisions. They've surrounded themselves with people who share their financial values instead of people who encourage destructive spending habits. The person who ends up financially free didn't get lucky. They made a series of small, consistent choices over many years that compound into massive results. They chose to live below their means when their friends were upgrading their lifestyles. They chose to pay off debt when their peers were accumulating more. They chose to invest when others were spending. None of these individual decisions seemed dramatic at the time, but collectively, they created a completely different life trajectory, bringing it back to same income, different outcomes. So there you have it. The difference between ending up rich or broke isn't about your salary, your background, or some secret knowledge that wealthy people guard jealously. It's about three simple choices: avoiding lifestyle inflation, staying out of toxic debt, and being intentional with your money by paying yourself first and buying assets. The person sipping cocktails on the beach didn't win the lottery. They just made different decisions with the same opportunities you have right now. Every day you're presented with choices that will either move you toward financial freedom or keep you trapped in the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. The beautiful thing is that it's never too late to start making better choices. Your future self is counting on the decisions you make today. Whether that future self is relaxing on a beach or still grinding away at a job they can't afford to leave is entirely up to you. The path to wealth isn't complicated, but it does require making choices that might feel uncomfortable in the short term to create the life you actually want in the long term. This video is educational only and not personal financial advice, but here's the simple challenge. Track where your money actually goes for 30 days. Pick one area to cut lifestyle inflation. Set up one automatic transfer to pay yourself first every payday. The question isn't whether you can afford to start investing or paying yourself first or tracking your spending. The question is whether you can afford not to, because every day you delay is another day that compound interest could have been working in your favor instead of against you. Your financial future starts with the next decision you make. Make it count. And if you want more videos that break this stuff down in simple, practical language, make sure you subscribe to Tim Invests and share this with that one friend who keeps saying, "I make good money, but I have no idea where it goes."